Using our discussion there as a backdrop, I want to look at the culture within the police department. You had an elected official who was arrested and abused last Labor Day, Councilmember Jemani Williams. You had Romarley Graham, a Jamaican immigrant in the Bronx, who the police pursued and shot in his home. The police commissioner is still to determine whether or not that shooting was justified. And the main fact that he's silent says a lot. Do you think the police department, and with regard to Councilmember Williams, all that happened was these police officers got a command reprimand, whatever that means. I think it's like a note or something in their files. Do you think there needs to be some sort of cultural change within the police department that could make it more accountable? One, that could make it more accountable to themselves, to the people of New York, or should we again look at legislation? Because in the case of all these young black men that were shot, most of these police officers were exonerated by in jury trials. Should we, in examining whether we should change the laws or not, maybe think about making the police officers personally liable when they kill people and they get off like this? Something, because there's this dissatisfaction in the community that they kill people and they get away with it all the time, and the most our politicians and community leaders do is hold a march, call a press conference, but then we go back to the same status quo.
Well, let me say this. I think that there are a couple of things that have to happen. One, I think that the leadership of the police department sets the tone for the behavior of the rank and file. The overwhelming majority of police officers in our town do a great job in protecting us. There are those who take that authority and abuse it, and we tend to bear the brunt of that abuse. When you set up a policy and then back it up to the hilt of something that they consider to be minor, like stop and frisk, what you've basically done is you've given a license to the most inexperienced of your officers to make a judgment call. And they don't want to make the wrong call. So when you're inexperienced and you're afraid to make the wrong call, every call becomes almost the wrong call. If you have said that it is okay to just stop and frisk black males, Latinos wholesale, you've essentially said these people have less rights than anyone else in our town. These people, to a certain degree, don't deserve the same level of they're not equal in their humanity to everyone else. So once you begin to see people as less human than yourself, then you're not going to care about the outcomes of your behavior with them, because you have all the authority. And so if you run into someone's house, it's because that house is less has less status in your mind in terms of their rights, in terms of their Americanness, in terms of all of the standards that we hold dear as a civil society. And it's okay for you to then run into that house, run into a bathroom, and shoot someone dead. That is what happens when there's a lack of sensitivity training and you allow this type of policy to go on for years unchecked.
So what, lastly on this topic, what changes, policy or legislative changes you would like to see that in your own mind would restore the community you represent,
Well,
that community's confidence in the police?
I think that there has to be a change and a shift in the leadership of the body, first of all. Second of all, I'm still for a residency requirement. I mean, when you have people who have grown up in environments that have less diversity than ours, where you're not accustomed to cultural behaviors, where you're not even given the opportunity to upgrade necessarily your understanding of these particular communities, then it leaves a lot of room for things to go very wrong very quickly. So I believe that a residency requirement would help to bring into the force the types of individuals who are familiar with the various communities, their socioeconomic situations, and all of the activities that are taking place in these communities, so that you don't have the types of blanket subordination of the people that live in those communities. When you just think about, what came out in the wake of the last West Indian Day Carnival Association event on Eastern Parkway, the resentment, the venom that were coming from police officers that were on that parkway supposed to protect and to serve. They had a total disdain for the people who were out there and wished them harm, wished them ill. So that says to me, something is really, really wrong in the department when the people who you are to protect and to serve, you have such a harsh view of, in terms of your relationship to them.
Do you think it's racist?
Oh, definitely. I mean, you bomb the parkway?
That sounds like a terroristic threat to me. Let's move on to an issue I know that is dear to you. The Republicans in the House recently recently voted on the Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act, and in that they gutted certain provisions, including protections for undocumented women. What's your view of that? Do you think we are moving as a country into a realm of inhumaneness towards people who don't look like certain people or who are undocumented?
Well, clearly,
or even women.
Clearly, there's been an assault on both since the Republicans came into the majority in the House of Representatives. The type of mean-spirited, totally inappropriate legislation that has come out of this body, it boggles the mind. As a New Yorker, you're much more attuned to how important it is for immigrant women to have the right to protection. And in many other parts of the country where immigrant populations are evident. But there are parts of this country where immigrant populations are sort of new to the mix. And in those areas, there's a fear factor that makes my colleagues act a bit irrational, and to say the least. And this is one of those instances, I believe, that we've had colleagues that, don't realize that removing this protection from these women could mean less security for them and their families as well, because they're all neighbors. And if one of these women who happen to be undocumented should witness a crime against a neighbor, that woman will have no protection in terms of stepping forward to say anything about it. Beyond that, if that woman is the victim of a crime herself, and her assailant has been a plague on the community, that woman would be less likely to testify in court, and that will be a disservice to the entire community. So I think it's very short-sighted, very mean-spirited, but I've come to see this as the way, unfortunately, that the Republican majority in the House conduct business, and it's on the backs of the poor and the immigrant communities.